Good evening. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. If anybody would like an agenda, they are just outside the door. And before we get started, let's see, Sandy Sullivan, could you lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would ask, I see our wonderful police department here, could you all come up front and I don't think so. This is a letter of appreciation to the Waterville Police Department. Dear Chief Massey, on behalf of the City Council and the residents of Waterville, I want to publicly thank you and the members of your department for what you do each day on our behalf. We were recently informed by the city manager of a weekend where the police department received many calls for service, some of a very serious nature. Many of us rarely see or understand what all of you are faced with on a daily basis. It is for that reason I think it's important for all of us, elected and non-elected alike, to stop and say thanks. Thanks not only to you and the officers, but everyone up and down the line in your department. We know that you will say we're only doing our job, but we also know it's not a job many of us could or would want to do. Thank you so much again for your service. Thank you all.
I could just say briefly on behalf of the Waterville Police Department and all the men and women who work at the police department, we want to thank you for this recognition. The job sometimes is difficult, challenging, but it's also rewarding. For many of us, that's what we're in this business for. And this recognition from City Council, city officials, and the public is really what it's all about for us. This is the reward for us. So again, on behalf of the police department, thank you so much for the recognition.
Thank you. Thank you all for making the effort. Thank you very much. Next up, we have a disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any counselors who have a conflict with any of the votes they will be asked to take this evening?
I have a conflict on resolution 106-2019. It's my employer.
Sounds good. Okay, next up, approval of the consent agenda. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? There is no unfinished business, so we are moving on to new business this evening. First, we have Resolution 106-2019.
Move to read by title only. Sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for issuance of a liquor license to Waterville Creates, doing business as Railroad Square Cinema.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Next, we have Resolution 107-2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for approval of heating and motor vehicle fuel bids.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Open for discussion. Counselor?
Are we going to try to buy fuel with the schools, or are we not doing that this year again also?
Too late. The school already entered into a contract for their supply, so we went out through the main power options, as Mark's memo says. No reason why we can't do it next year, combined with the school.
Were we too late also last year? I mean, I thought last year we missed it and we missed it again this year.
Last year, the council directed Mike to go out to bid, and by the time he was done going out to bid, it was too late.
Yeah. We'll start earlier next year and, you know, check on what the school gets for a price and see how it looks.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Next, Resolution 108, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for ratification of collective bargaining agreement, AFSCME Council 93 unit.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll move to a vote. All in favor? Next, Resolution 109, 2019.
A resolution providing for police vehicle bid approval. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council, acting as the municipal officers, that the City Council hereby accepts the bid for two 2020 Ford Utility Police Interceptor SUVs from Darlings Bangor Ford in the amount of $57,976, which includes the trade-in value of 2 police vehicles.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion.
Chief, is there any particular reason we didn't get any bids from from anyone in Waterville?
We do put it out to all our locals, we put it on our Facebook page, we put it on the city webpage. Going back for several years, the only dealers who are interested in bidding for them on a regular basis is Port Ford and Downs. This is probably the second time Hike Chevrolet or Hike Ford has put in a bid in the last 8-10 years. Port Ford usually gets most of the bids because he by far sells more police vehicles than any other dealership. But we had Central Maine provide a low bid 4 or 5 years ago, and one of the Chevy Cruisers that we have right now came from Central Maine Motors.
And does the price include, I know we switch a lot of equipment over from our current cruisers sometimes to the new ones. Does that include whatever work goes into doing that?
No. No, it doesn't. It does not.
So is that something else, do we have somebody do that for us?
We do. What I do is use the trade-in cost to offset, the setups for the cruisers.
I have a question. These, not that I foresee a problem, but these are items that are included in the upcoming budget that has not been approved by the council, is that correct?
These vehicles will be purchased through the drug forfeiture fund.
But they are part of the new budget.
In the upcoming budget?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right, that's correct.
But they don't require authorization of new funds because it's drug forfeiture money.
Right, but in the past, the council has chosen to use like I said, I don't foresee a problem. I guess I just want the council to be aware that the funds,
We can't go back and then in the budget say we're only buying one cruiser.
correct. That's my point.
Right.
Michael?
Yeah.
Do you have something to add, or are we ready for a vote?
Well, I think that we would ask you to approve the purchase tonight, but we're not going to sign any contract with the purchase of the cars until after you take your budget votes. All we know is that you've given us approval, and before we commit to anything, we'll wait until the budget's approved.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
So, we said Central Maine provided a lower bid years back. Distribution, a notice was sent to vendors here, but Central Maine is not on the list. How come somebody didn't send a notice to them to ask them to see if they wanted to bid too? Because I look at the list that was submitted and Central Maine is not on there.
Right. We also send a lot of them out email because those particular dealerships
Yeah.
do not submit bids. So we go ahead, and I think we email like 13 in all, but these were the 3 top closest bids. Had someone else been a lower bid, including Central Maine Motors, they would be on here.
So did Central Maine put it on a bid? They did?
They didn't even
Did
bid.
not. Okay.
And that's fairly common in the past, is that correct?
the Ford dealership, which actually is in
Yeah.
Oakland, but still very local. They've bid once or twice before in the past.
Right.
Yeah, we want to hit everyone, and that's why we put it out on social media to make sure that not only statewide, we've even had some bids occasionally come in from out of state. Someone sees it on our webpage.
Okay. Is the council ready for a vote? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Next, Resolution 110, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for adoption of a policy for use of drug forfeiture assets.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We've been talking about this for a while because, as you all know, we've received a lot of money in drug forfeiture assets, not only money, but cars and other stuff from seizures, and it's grown to the point where, well, for many, many years, the amounts we'd collect each year would be so small that the spending for those, of that money, was done as part of the regular police annual budget process. Now we're getting a little bit concerned because some of those amounts coming in are large, and we want to make sure that what we, the police department, and what I approve with the police department is with your approval. So we've proposed this as a way of trying to make sure the reporting and is very transparent. And one item that kind of triggered this is, I'm going to ask Chief Massey just to explain to you about one piece of equipment that we purchased with drug forfeiture money, and all of a sudden we realized, you know, the council really needs to be more aware of it because it ends up being a very important piece, but also something that people are going to notice.
We just currently put online this van, and it's what we call a mobile command vehicle. This was not purchased, it was donated, but we've used forfeiture money to retrofit it. And so for the last 10 years, whenever we have had
Chief, could you tell us who donated that for the record?
Colby College.
Thank you.
So for the last 10 years, when we've had a major incident, whether that's a major crime, another event, some social event downtown. A couple of days ago, we had a lady that wandered off from a home who had dementia. When we get back to the station, we debrief and critique that particular incident on what we did well, what we didn't do well, what equipment we have, what equipment we didn't have and should have. And for the last decade, and we've had many major incidents, including armed standoffs, the one common piece of equipment that we always said that we desperately needed was a mobile command vehicle that allows us to bring all our resources to bear at one time. It provides security for the officers, transportation, special equipment, an additional communication link to all the folks that we need. It enables us to relieve the officers when we're at an armed standoff and it's below zero like we had on College Avenue, to give them a break, let them have a coffee. But another thing that allows us to do is very important. It allows us to take a victim, a witness, and even a suspect on scene, give them the privacy, get them out of the public eye, put them in the van, and in fact speak to them or interview them depending on what is going on. We can use this for ice events, floodings, any major, again, events that we have for the public downtown. But it has really enabled us to operate safely and efficiently at major crimes. And I got a list of major crimes here that we have responded to over the last 10 years. Many of them are armed standoffs, and we really need a place where we can put our heads together, where we can look at what we have, where we can look at an ops plan that we've already put together, make sure that we're following it, and have that privacy and that security that the van provides us. So a couple of years ago, I talked to the city administrator, told him that we needed this van and that I'd at least like to move ahead and take a look at some vehicles, excuse me, some vehicles and the pricings of vans to see if it's fiscally feasible for us to do that. And so looking at brand new mobile command vehicles, I mean, bottom line, 100,000 up to $500,000 out of the question for a new one. So we started looking at other options, such as could we get a used one? Could we purchase a used one? When we got anywhere close to an operational van, we were still talking $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $70,000, and upwards sometimes of $50,000 to retrofit them. So I got my command staff together. We started to determine our needs, the type of vehicle that we'd need, the size that we would need, again, within our resources and limitations. And so we all decided that something like KV Cap or jitneys would work well. They have multiple entrances and exits. They provide quite a bit of room. They already come with heat and air in the back and in the front. And so they really seem to be that configuration of vehicle to be what we really needed. So I started looking again at used ones. Anything that was roadworthy, talking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So then I reached out to KV Cap to ask if they were going to trade in one of their vehicles. I did the same thing with Colby. And if you're going to trade it in to buy another one, would you consider letting us purchase it if it's reasonable and we can do it? And Colby eventually stepped forward and said that they would donate one to us. It needed some work. We got this, I believe, in September, but it took us 4 or 5 months to start to retrofit it, get some mechanical repairs done to it and some other things before we could even start to use it. So that is the vehicle. It's been used 4 times in the last 2 weeks. So again, it's just a valuable piece of equipment that offers such diversity for us and efficient, and again, brings all our resources to bear. And it's hard to operate without them, especially for Waterville. We're as busy as we are, and I don't see that ending anytime soon.
Chief, when we receive money or property, is that post-conviction? People have been convicted of crimes?
Well, the property is post-conviction, assets that we receive through forfeiture, but this had nothing to do with...
I know, but we're talking about drug forfeiture funds, so I'm just trying to make sure there's a clear understanding that we're not taking property from people or money from people who have not been convicted of a crime.
Not only do they have to be convicted, and it has to be cleared by the judge and ordered by the judge, then the district attorney sends us, the police department, a document saying this property, according to law, has been forfeited over, bestowed by the municipal officers. We have to sign it, send it back to the DA's office, and then we get a final letter saying, okay, you're good to go. And none of that occurs until the conviction happens.
So if somebody is driving a car that they own and they get caught with drugs in it, is that a car that you could take?
Absolutely. Well, again, you got to get the conviction and you have to prove that they used the car to facilitate trafficking in drugs. But if we do that and we're successful, we get the car.
Okay.
Most of the time, they're worth $200, and that's what we get for them.
Sure.
We don't take cars that would have a loan against them for $10,000, $20,000. We'd have to pay that off.
Sure. And if anyone's wondering, my line of questioning is civil asset forfeiture is an incredible abuse that throughout this country. It's a severe violation of people's property rights, and that's why I'm asking. So it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job, but I just want to make sure it's not something we feel like we're going overboard, and that people are actually, these are things that are directly linked to crimes, and we're not just doing a money grab.
Well, there's a lot of safeguards in that, and before it comes in front of you folks, it has been in front of a judge has convicted, a judge has ordered the asset forfeitures to be distributed, it has to be approved by the district attorney, we have to finalize the paperwork. So when you folks get it, it goes through that whole process.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just clarify that the new guidelines, as I understand them, say that the money will be going towards the police operations, the drug forfeiture assets, sorry.
Right.
But also could be used for other projects in the city eventually. Is that correct? So this is kind of
Absolutely.
expanding.
Historically, the council has allowed us to use it to offset the cost of operations. There have been times, like 3-4 years ago, where we seized $170,000. The city took that to offset the operating budget.
Yep.
In the past, we've bought cruisers. We're buying cruisers again. So whether it's offset in my budget or you use it for some other area, it can only be used in that function, and you folks have the ultimate say how drug forfeiture assets are used, disposed of.
So I've raised the issue with the city manager and with you as well. At some point in the future, they're taking the lead of some other communities that are using some of this money towards drug treatment programs, and I think
We can do that.
Operation Hope is a fantastic program that you're running through the police department, and I think that would be a great destination for some of those funds.
Is there any further discussion? Is the council ready for a vote? Yep. Okay, thank you, Chief. All in favor? Great, thank you. Next is Resolution 111, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for authorization for sale of a property, Sterling Street.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there discussion?
I put a copy of the map in front of all of you. Go right ahead.
Hi. My husband, Sean Brooks, and I,
Hey, guys.
our property abuts the city park on Sterling Street. We propose that the city retain ownership of that. It has been an important part of our children's childhood. They love playing there every single day. They meet a lot of kids there. When the city doesn't have time to maintain it, my husband often will mow the lawn. He's filled in the holes that were left from the equipment being removed. It's just an important part of our community that we'd really like to retain. We'd also be willing to buy it, but I know that we have the opportunity to be outbid in that situation. So I'm not much of a risk taker, and I would prefer the city retain ownership. But if it is an issue with maintenance, then we are more than willing to maintain that property for as long as it's needed.
So it is going to be offered to you or the person right there on the, are you on the corner or right?
We're on 143 Carver Street, so it's our entire
Okay,
back of our
so
property.
Do you have a pool?
Yes.
So I live in that neighborhood. I never really see children out there. I'm glad some are using it.
You haven't seen
wish
ours? They're there every day.
I got 4 more down on the Wies, so if they want to
Send them up.
play, absolutely.
They love new friends.
It's going to be offered to you guys first, and I really hope one of you guys buys it. But the city's always maintaining it, and my fear is that it used to be a playground, it used to be an ice rink, then it was a playground, all the playground equipment got ripped out. You've said it yourself, you have to fix some of the things yourself. We're just not doing a good job of maintaining that, so I really don't want us to own it because we're not doing a good job of maintaining it. I hope you decide to take it. I really do, because it'll add to your backyard.
Yes.
And you'll maybe move the pool over to the other
We
corner.
definitely would love to. My only concern with that is also restricting access to the rest of the neighborhood's kids.
Right, because it opens you up to liability.
Right.
Yeah.
We'd have to fence
So-
that off and.
As someone who's often a stickler for money and selling things and trying to get them off the city tax, onto the city tax rolls, I do think there's something to be said for maintaining the integrity of our wards and our neighborhoods and the historic nature for those who moved into them. This is something that we're constantly battling. I guess, personally, I would like to see this stay a city property. I mean, I feel like if the neighbors like, I mean, there's certainly enough room there for potential, and neighborhood people are using it. I guess maybe it's just a sentimental part of me. I just feel like we don't want to lose everything we have. And have we asked the people of Ward 5 how they feel about it and who live in that neighborhood? I mean, to me, that has to play an important part. If all the neighbors were like, hey, can you sell this? It's a blight. But when we have people who are wanting to take care of it even when we can't, because they're that dedicated to keeping this space in this neighborhood, I really hope the council thinks about that.
How much outreach was done to the neighborhood to let them know that this, was there letters sent out to the
No.
surrounding neighborhood?
There was one line in the paper. That's how we found out about it, by chance.
Are you a neighbor as well, sir? Would you like, no, come on right up.
Ryan Robinson, live right across the street from these guys. Grew up in that neighborhood. Grandparents lived there, corner. I own the house now because they're of age. One thing that neighborhood is aging, right? They have young kids. I have a young son. Eventually, that neighborhood's going to turn over. Playground be gone. That'd be a shame. I grew up, Rob Dubois, then the plant. You guys, right? We all grew up there. Hate to lose it. And we need to do a better job at it, right?
Yeah.
There's a basketball hoop, that thing's falling down. I've actually talked about, with my grandparents, putting up a basketball hoop because that doesn't fall down and hit a kid or whatever. That hoop's the same hoop was there 40 years ago when I played on it. One more question.
Yeah.
Do you think if we kept it and didn't sell it,
Yep.
that as a neighborhood, we'd be able to do something, some sort of fundraising, to turn that into a better playground than what it is now?
Absolutely. And I thank him because I'm not there all the time, but he's the one mowing it. He's the one doing any work on it. There is no city work on it per se. Honestly, I mean, I've been.
Yeah, and maybe there should be. I guess, my neighborhood 10 years ago was probably one of the most elderly blocks in the city, and it's really turned over. So what you're saying is dead on. You're going to have turnover, and I think it'd be a shame to lose an asset for you folks there. So I hope the council doesn't vote for this.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said when you have some, the neighbors have to have the final say, I feel. It is, the council actually, I understand there was a perception that this wasn't being used, but now you folks have come forth and have obviously have something invested in there, especially with the children, and that generation has to be taken into account first and foremost. And there has to be better communication from our parts if we are going to decide on a parcel of land that's city-owned and if it's not being utilized even by perception, that we have to do a better communication with those neighbors in that particular street where that property is. But yeah, I agree with Jay and the neighbors if this is something that we can do some fundraising and try to put something back into that parcel of land, that the children will be more enhanced to be there even longer and grow up over the years, and memories, we all know what those are. Those cannot be replaced. And there's a lot to be said about generation after generation, and if this is something they feel passionate about, I think I agree with the mayor, it has to be heard. Neighborhoods have to be sustained, and I think this is something to really take into account.
What's the closest other city park to this?
Rummels, but there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But again, like
And
this
that's
park,
also-
there's nothing there other than that basketball
But they
hoop.
can
that-
play in the field, and they can,
They can play
hit a
ball,
softball.
and yeah.
I do
And
think
they
if
meet
there
other
was-
kids.
I do think if there was a swing set or something, right? There used to be a slide there, a bunch of swings. Horses used to have springs on them, old school stuff, right? That got removed from lead, right, back in probably 15 years ago. But that stuff, everybody was always using it. Now there's just nothing there, so the kid goes and plays football or whatever there, but there's no like swings and things. Bring your kid with and swing with them.
But you think that if we all got together as a neighborhood, we can make that happen?
I think it would be
Absolutely.
great to do that, yeah.
We'd be
Then I'd
willing
like to
do
remove this
anything.
from the agenda if we can, or table it.
Well, I'd make I'd make a motion that we table it
We table.
so that there can be more outreach to the neighborhood to make sure that there's consensus, because you might hear concerns from other people another way. So I'd move that we table it till the next city council meeting, so that more outreach can be done to the neighborhood to make sure there's a consensus about what they want done with this property. And I I would also just say that if that's the way this council wants to go, then we have to be prepared to make a commitment to, these things cost money. We have to be prepared to make a commitment to actually maintain this property in a condition that it's usable by the neighborhood and not necessarily put the onus on the butters to maintain it.
But it's not a big deal for us to mow it. We have a riding lawnmower. He loves mowing.
Right,
We're more
but,
than willing to do that all the time.
but you might not live there forever,
Yes.
For quite a while.
you know.
So, I do think, and-
Should we get a second to the?
I'm willing to give a second as long as the communication is enhanced and guaranteed to go out. So we need to make sure that happens.
Okay, so
Did-
this
okay,
second
this
to
is-
table,
Second.
okay.
no, to table to the next meeting.
So the reason why we decided to sell the parcel is because we were under the understanding that, it wasn't being used. And the property that's not being used costs the city money, right, to maintain. You guys are dedicated to doing that. It's good. But like you said, when we decide to do this, we have to do the same for other properties around the city when people decide to come and say, hey, we like it and we want to keep it. And we're trying to play the balance of, making sure that we take care of our properties, but also that we take care of our finances, because again, those things do cost money. And I agree, we should be able to keep it as long as there's a consensus around the neighborhood for folks to be able to take care of that. And maybe we should make it a habit to just, pass on the selling property, but we can take it case by case and see how we can work with constituents to make things happen.
I would just add kind of a footnote here. I think this raises a good conversation about just about city planning in general. Sometimes, we're always talking about expand, 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 but we're not taking care of the stuff we have. And we do that. We launch knee deep into a new project. Well, like, a sidewalk on the other side of the street's falling apart. I think that's something we need to really think about. And, this is the kind of thing that in some ways is victim of that kind of, we can only take care of so much, but then we just keep growing and expanding outward rather than just taking care of the infrastructure that we have. Just a footnote thought, but thank you very much for coming and bringing this up, guys. We'll take a vote on the table. Is everyone ready? Mr. Payne wanted to say some words.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. When I was campaigning in that ward a few years ago, that was actually a big issue. I heard that park. Many of the local neighbors approached me asking for the city to restore it, and I know a lot of the neighbors were volunteering looking after it. So there was a good bunch in that whole street that were concerned, and this issue dates back a lot further than what's hitting the books today.
Great.
And maybe it'll encourage some more young people to get into Ward 5, but I don't think it needs a pool slide in there, just a nice little swing set or something like that.
Yeah.
That, if the community built, then the liability would be on the city for the area at that point, so,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you. The motion on the table is to table this until the next city council meeting. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. Next is Order 112, 2019.
An order providing for sale of city property, Airport Road. Be it hereby ordered, could I just ask a question before we move on?
Yeah.
Is there something that you want us to do to get information out to the people of Ward 5? I'm not sure.
Send letters to the abutters.
To the direct abutters or within so many feet, or what do you?
However the planning board does it.
I think I would discuss it further with the counselor from that ward,
So do you want to work with us to try to?
and perhaps work with the people who showed up.
Been notified before the meeting.
Correct, yeah. I would say the whole street. pretty
Yeah, I
much.
would say.
I would say Sterling Street itself.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if there's a directive for what you want us to do, that we're clear on what you want us to do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Okay, an order providing for sale of city property, Airport Road. Be it hereby ordered by the Waterville City Council, acting as municipal officers, that the city manager be authorized to negotiate a contract for sale for lot number 5 to Pondwood LLC in the Airport Business Park in the amount of $70,000.
Move to adopt.
And second.
And Michael?
This is a lot that we have listed for sale with Coldwell Banker. So an offer's been received. We have it listed at $73,000. The offer came in at 70, and I recommend that that's what we agreed to accept and move forward with selling. We've had those lots for, must be close to 20 years, haven't sold many, so this is very good news.
And it's not a playground, right?
No.
No swing sets, huh?
No, it's not.
Thank you.
Discussion. All in favor?
Very good, thank you.
Great. Next is Order 113, 2019.
An order providing for sale of city property off Airport Road. Be it hereby ordered by the Waterville City Council, acting as the municipal officers, that the city manager be authorized to sell undeveloped city-owned land off the Airport Road to Leo St. Peter for the amount of $12,000 per acre, with the understanding that Mr. St. Peter be responsible for surveying the acreage that he wants to purchase.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Mike?
I know that Mr. St. Peter's here. I don't know if he wants to add anything more.
Leo, do you want to come up?
Thank you.
You bet.
I made a couple of offers. I've gone back and forth with Mike. It's kind of creeping up. First time I get a chance to talk to you guys about it. And my first offer was lower than this offer. I never really wanted to pay for the survey. I always thought if you were selling land, you survey it and you say, this is what we got. Do you want to buy it? So I'd like to, I don't really want to pay for a survey. I'm not saying that I won't, but I don't want to. That wasn't my offer. I actually offered X amount of dollars per acre, and I want a road, because there's no road. And then I checked into the utilities, because on the website, Caldwell Banker, you have lots that are developed with water, sewer, and electric. And the road ends here. My goal is to connect my property to the airport road so that when the connection between the airport road extension and the Mitchell Road is done, then I would have access to the interstate, to KMD, through the backside of my property. So because right now I'm kind of landlocked. I got a big, long, narrow piece of property, and the only access to a road is my driveway, which is not super convenient. So I need utilities. I would like utilities. I'm not Daniel Boone. And the water district and sewer district, I checked with them, they want just for 200 odd feet, give it plus or minus, $30,000 or $40,000 a piece to give me water and sewer. But the Caldwell Banker website, when you list your property, which these aren't listed on, says utilities. So I kind of need utilities. And I would say to City Council, last year, the city or some agent of the city cut this piece of land, I would assume, but no one said anything, I don't know the real answer, to build the road. So if we're going to build the road that connects the Mitchell Road to the airport road, which the DOT has talked about to alleviate traffic from KMD, let's just build the road. I don't want to build your road. I don't want to bring water and sewer down it. But it'd be nice to have water and sewer. It'd be nice to have electric. At some point, the city is going to do this. I mean, we're going to do this. I don't necessarily want to pay for it, but I need those things. But I would like the property. And since it isn't surveyed, but there are lines on a map, is it 8 acres, 10 acres, 11 acres, Mike?
How would I know? You haven't told me what it is you want.
There's like 3 lots that I need to connect our properties. And then we were talking around 10 acres, correct?
That's my guess, best guess.
Yeah, about.
11 is my best guess, but until some lines are put out there,
Right,
it's purely a guess.
right.
Do we know how much the survey would be, Mike?
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, I don't. I didn't look into
And there is, to be clear, there currently is no plan. I mean, there's been talk for a long time about putting a road through there, but it's not, that wasn't cut as part of the beginning of a plan to put the road in there. There is no current, there's been no money allocated, there's no plan to build the road at this point, right? Nothing has been put in motion to actually build that road.
That's right. The reason the area was cut, as Mr. St. Peter mentioned, is we had someone doing cutting on the airport property. So we said, while we have someone there, now would be a good time for us to cut the right-of-way of that road. The road was actually laid out on that property back in 1997. That's about when the city extended the airport road. So the city spent a lot of money building that road, putting water, putting sewer, electricity right to the end. And it was always hoped for that a connection would be made from that end, dead end, to the Mitchell Road. But that's $1 million or more, probably.
Yeah.
So we had the center line laid out of the road and a right-of-way cut, so we could at least see the terrain that the road would travel on. But it's an expensive deal to cut a road right through, the woods, basically. Would it be a great thing for the city to have a connection between KMD and Webb Road? Yes, it would. And could it be a good spur for growth? Yes, I think it would. We got to figure out how to spend the money to do it.
Mike, is it possible for us to get the survey results through the engineering? Can Nick Champagne look into that as far as an estimate of cost? What the survey cost would be to do that, just so that we have a figure staring at us right in front, so.
Well, what I would suggest doing is to contact our surveyor that laid out the center line of the road, and from that center line, he might be able to, from that work that he did back quite a few years ago, give us an estimate on the surveying. But who pays for the surveying, of course, is up to you folks. But I could at least find out how much.
I think that would be pertinent to this, this order, obviously, I would think, getting that information.
Leo, let's assume that the city's not going to put water, sewer, and a road there for you. Do you still want to buy it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I would definitely like to have further back and forth, the sale, not just with one person. I want to, like this council has said earlier, land that we own is money we're losing. And we've owned it for 20 years. No one's done anything with it. I'm willing to do something. I'm willing to put a building on it and put it back on the tax rolls. If we could have done that 20 years ago, that's a lot of money lost. I'm not good at math, but it's a lot. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested in the land.
So would you prefer that we table this and continue to negotiate with you, but you would like, am I hearing you would like our broker, you would like a couple counselors included in that?
Please.
So that you'd have some more discussion.
I'm assuming he wants to revise his offer too, if we're not gonna, if now that he's aware that there's no,
survey.
and that there's no water or sewer.
So do you want to table this to the next meeting? Would
Yes, I would.
Would that work for you, at least to give you some time? And then if we need to postpone it at that point, we can do it again?
I mean,
I can get an estimate from the surveyor within the next 2 weeks, and then you can decide what you want to do with it.
We'll just stay engaged. That
Well,
works.
and Leo should also submit a revised offer so that we know what we're
Probably want to do that, too.
discussing.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Great.
Move to table this until the next city council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion on the table motion? All in favor? Thank you, Leo. We'll see you in a
you.
couple weeks.
Thank you.
Next. Resolution 114, 2029?
Move to read by title only.
Second.
I think that was supposed to be 2019.
Yes.
Sorry, that threw me off for a minute. I knew it.
How time flies.
Was there a motion to read by title only?
Yeah,
All in
there
favor?
was a second, yeah. Thank you. A resolution providing for declaring an emergency to preserve the public health and safety.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Just so everyone knows, this is because we're not going to finalize our budget by the end of June, because we want to wait until the state has their numbers actually finalized, but it sounds like we're going to be getting them, so we should be on target to pass this as soon as we get into July. But we did want to make sure we had those numbers final. This is just so we can continue funding through that time.
Yep.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Next is Order 115, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
And second.
All in favor?
An order providing for emergency funding for city and school operations.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Resolution 116, 2019.
A resolution providing for amending public hearing requirements for new on-premise liquor licenses. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as the municipal officers as follows, that the City Council agrees to no longer require a formal public hearing and the associated public hearing notices for all new on-premise liquor licenses.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Discussion.
Is this in response to,
Yes, Ms. Bergeron was at a council meeting a few weeks ago and expressed concern about the cost for public hearing notices for a liquor license. Our past practice has always been to require the public hearing, which triggers the formal public notice option that's in state statute. If that's not the will of the council any longer and they prefer not to have the formal public hearing process, we can still continue to put a new item on the council agenda so that it is discussed in a public forum, but it would no longer trigger that formal public hearing notification that is, as she mentioned, quite costly. So if it's the will of the council, then we can move in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just the simple fact that the notice has to be put in the paper, and, you know, most young folks and most folks get their news from the smartphones and tablets and so forth. So I don't think that many people get to see that information. So I think it's definitely time for us to revise that.
Yeah, and I second that because, like Jennifer showed, and the cost is quite frightening. When you consider, especially for, business owners that are already in business, and let alone the new entrepreneurs that want to start a business. So that's, to me, it's a very unfriendly business fee, and we need to eliminate that, and I think we should.
Great. Any other discussion? All in favor? Resolution 117, 2019.
A resolution providing for creation of a solar study committee. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as the municipal officers as follows, that a committee be formed to study the options available to the city regarding the construction of solar facilities to help meet the energy needs of city and school facilities.
move to adopt.
Second.
Yeah, I think it's something that I still and strongly believe will benefit the city and our school. Technology is evolving. We see more and more benefits from, solar and all the things that it can do for us. I'm a big advocate of solar. I told people I take advantage of those, of that technology at my own house. So I really believe that as a city we can save a lot of money by investing in solar.
Is there any discussion or questions from the council? Cindy? Oh, sorry, Counselor.
Go ahead.
Then Cindy.
Oh, I was just going to say that I assume that any interested members of the public could contact the city clerk about participating in the committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I guess I would also hope that the committee would consider exploring not only solar for the city and the schools, but for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why we're looking at it is to see if we have, the means and the space to be able to do that. Obviously, the more generation that is needed means the more space that is needed, right? There's some space that we think will make sense. But again, technology is evolving rapidly. Now, what used to take a couple of acres will just take, the very small amount of space. Who knows, maybe in 5 years, you will just need a small building to be able to power an entire city. So So some of the things that we have to look at and see if it makes sense, fiscally for the city, and look at those numbers to make sure that we get a good return of our investment.
And also how government subsidies and policy may affect other electricity ratepayers as well. Because sometimes it's great you get this big rebate from the state, but your fellow ratepayers have all paid for that. So that should be part of that as well.
Correct.
All right, ready for a vote? All in favor? Next is Order 118, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for approval of forfeiture.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion.
This must be one of those $200 vehicles.
That's what I was. Is that what it is?
Yeah, just make sure.
So what's the process for selling these, like a vehicle like that? What's the process that is taken? Is it put for bid? Is it just sold to first come, first served to the general public, to dealership? I don't know.
Generally, if it's not roadworthy, we just call the local scrap metal dealer and have them come in and they buy it for $150. If in fact we're going to sell it, then sometimes it comes to the city property, and we need a bidding process, and we advertise that.
So just thinking, I know, depending on the condition of the vehicle, we might be able to get more money from, selling it to the public if that's something that is possible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If it's roadworthy, but we're not going to use it for our own use, then we always sell it, and we always do a bidding process.
Any other questions? Take a vote. All in favor? Next is Ordinance 119, 2019.
An ordinance providing for amendment to administrative ordinance. Be it enacted by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the amendments shown to Section 3 of the administrative ordinance regarding the sale of foreclosed property be amended.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Discussion?
I think you all remember this came up as a result of the foreclosure sale that we had 2 weeks ago. And so the language that you see has been drafted by Bill Lee. I think, the only question is the amount, the 150% amount. Actually, it's 1.5 times the amount. So if someone wants to redeem their property after the first 30 days of foreclosure, they have an additional 60 days, but the amount they have to pay is 1.5 times the amount due. So if it was $3,000 due, the final amount would be $4,500.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep. And I see that as very acceptable. So, and we had a lot of discussion on this, and I think it's a reasonable
Right.
to do this.
For those in the audience, this is just a way that we actually have a policy that dictates, so if people have had a foreclosed property and they've missed the first chance, they've missed the second chance, we want to be able to give them even one more chance to get their own property. If they wish to buy that property back, rather than have it be sold to a stranger, we want to extend that ability a little bit, but also have it be in policy and fair to the rest of the community as well.
And sometimes people just don't understand, even though they've been told what the consequences are, they don't understand that the city actually will take their property. And sometimes it takes actually getting to that point for them to realize that it's a serious situation. And in a case, we had a recent case where there was no mortgage on the home. So the idea of taking a home where the person didn't owe any money on it just because they, I think, really didn't understand what they'd gotten themselves into, it just didn't feel right, so.
And they did pay to buy it back. It wasn't,
Yeah.
we didn't just give it back.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Very good.
Next is Ordinance 120, 2019.
An ordinance providing for amendment to the licenses and permits ordinance. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as municipal officers as follows, that the licenses and permits ordinance be amended to add a late fee to certain licenses and a fee for a reprint of a taxicab operator's ID card.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what prompted the change. Is this something that we looked at some numbers that we thought they weren't in
Yeah.
line with what other communities are doing, or?
Yep, well, as part of the budget process this year, we did a comparison with other communities of the business license fees that we charge. For the most part, we're pretty much in line, but we did find that there were some communities that did trigger a late fee after a certain amount of time of being unlicensed. There is additional follow-up that needs to take place on our part, so it's an incentive for people to get their licenses renewed on time, and it also helps us to recoup some of the additional costs of mailings and that sort of thing. The fee for a license reprint for a taxi cab is because we do print formal ID cards, and we have no ability to charge for that additional service, so we thought we would add that while we were making a change to the ordinance.
Any other questions or comments? We'll take a vote. All in favor? Next is counselor updates. Is there any counselors that would like to give an update this evening? Counselor.
Just want to touch base on what happened in Augusta with the budget being passed and all the good news that are coming from Augusta. So we're looking at a revenue sharing increase, and we are looking at some increases from for the schools. So with all that, I really believe that as a community, as a city, we should be able to come ahead, and I believe with a flat budget, because from the money that we saved last year and the money, that additional money that we got this year, I really think, I don't think that there's a reason why we shouldn't be able to do that, as long as we'll look at everywhere in the budget at ways to make that happen.
Any other counselor updates?
I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that what we did tonight in terms of declaring the emergency is to allow us to hold 2 full meetings where the budget will be discussed, which is the first and then the final meeting in July, where we'll have a chance to go over in great detail all of those numbers and come up with a budget that is in the best interest and balances all the competing needs in the city.
I just want to mention, it's more of a community note, I think. My job at the Opera House, next Friday, the 28th, kicks off the Waterville Rocks free concert series in Castangwe Square. The first one is the Mallet Brothers Band and Him for Her. And then there's one the following week, and then there'll be a 2-week break for the film festival, and then there's 2 concerts in a row following the film festival. And these are free events that start around 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the square, Castangwe Square. And they're family friendly, and Waterville Creates will have some activities going on for children, and I really hope people will come out and enjoy it.
Thank you. All right, moving on to community notes. Community notes is a time, if anybody has something they would like to say or speak about that was not on the agenda tonight, now would be the time to do it. We ask that you come to the podium, tell us your name, where you live, and what you have to say. We ask you to keep it to a couple minutes.
Am I Ward 4? I'm Ward 4. Yeah, so number one, I make no apologies for making a FOIA request. After being somebody who was targeted by a former counselor and investigated by somebody here in this room as well unnecessarily, I think I have a right to make that request. And to be targeted by our town manager because he was questioned for his duties is not the scope of his job in the paper. As a citizen of this town, that's not my expectation. My expectation is that you actually do your job. I don't know how he got put back on this job. This counselor should be ashamed to have put him there. 2 of you abstained, so I'm really proud of you for not asking to have him put back there. But, that type of behavior, that's not what you do in your job. Going after citizens because they've got a concern about the way abuses in the council or somebody that's representing the citizens are using their resources against people in the town. If we have a concern, I have every right to have that. But to all of a sudden have concerns about cost of FOIA requests and attack citizens, shame on you. Thank you.
Council meeting after council meeting, I listened to Mr. Libby spew out anger at people. I just want you to know that the investigation he's talking about was because of a concern a councilor had about him. And I was obligated to at least talk to her and that's exactly what I did. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that when he says I was investigated. Thank you.
Anybody else for community notes?
Kathy Weeks, Ward 1. First, Mayor, I would like to thank you for the words you spoke tonight about preserving Waterville and the wards and the neighborhoods. I think we've really gotten away from that in many areas, so thank you for that focus. Phil, thank you for your questions about why are we not purchasing the heating oil with the school to have a lower price. Well, I believe this is the third year we've had the same excuse. And you're right, we could have saved money if that had been targeted. So thank you for that and for what you said about the budget. Because the two things when I ran for Ward 1, the two concerns were the property tax increases every year, and the council and all of the leadership just keeps approving more and more and more. We're getting less and less and less, so there's something wrong with that picture. So thank you for that. The other concern in Ward 1 was the city manager. We need a new city manager that creates leadership, and it proves time and time and time again we do not have that. So I thank Ward 5 and Ward 1 for voting the way they did on that. I also, I want to thank Mr. Payne for writing this article in Community Compass, because he spoke the truth. And it's very embarrassing to think that a citizen cannot ask for a FOIA. Obviously, there is a concern, there is something that does not want to be disclosed. So thank you so much for your work.
Anybody else for community notes?
Mark Andre, Oakland and Ward 3. Well, you know. Just to clarify, the city budget discussions, in prior meetings you had discussed having a special session to do them at the end of June. That's off the table, and they'll occur in the regular July meetings.
No, there'll be a special session the second week of July.
There will be a special session.
There will be, so that way, instead of waiting 2 weeks in between, we'll have the first week of July, and then there'll be a special meeting called the second week of July, so it's the very next week.
So there'll be a council meeting a week back to back.
Yeah, which actually will turn into 3 weeks back to back.
Okay.
Assuming we have stuff to put on.
One other point I wanted to clarify, the revenue sharing amount of 3%, which was passed by the legislature, is not what was promised at 5%.
That's right.
And the Republican legislators actually pushed for that, and I think the residents should know that. I just spoke to Mike Perkins in Oakland today, and they pushed to have that 5% restored. Mike, roughly the difference between 3 and 5% to Waterville in terms of money is about $1 million.
Half a percent was about 300,000 almost, so
about $1.2 million that was promised during the campaigns that did not come to fruition. Now, with that in mind, the city is still short a lot of money, and there's an issue that I want to raise with this council over revenues to the city that the city may be entitled to. Now, I had originally last year discussed a pilot contribution from Colby. That's a payment in lieu of taxes. I think you need to revisit that issue with the understanding that there's issues now that Colby is engaged in that may actually require some of their property on their campus to be taxed. Now, I'm not an attorney. It's something that you should look into with your city attorney. But when you have folks at Colby campus managing commercial property downtown, that could possibly make the office space on Colby campus taxable. And I don't know that the city has ever looked into that.
This happened, was it Yale? This there's some case law on
this happened at Princeton, but this is one of the reasons colleges all over the country are making pilot contributions to the cities they are in, is because there are places where they cross into for-profit activities, and rather than breaking open their books line item by line item, they have come to the realization that making that contribution is not only in the town's interest, but in their interest. So what I would ask from the council is to review with Colby the activities that they're engaged in, and as to whether or not it may be appropriate to obtain some type of a payment in the form of taxes. And I think you may find that you can get quite a budget cut from that in terms of the additional revenues, considering that the state failed to give you $1.2 million that the predominant party, the Democrats, promised.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, here he comes.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. I just have a question about a past issue you were talking about tonight. So with the drug revenue, that can now go back potentially into the city pot rather than just the police department?
No, it always could. What we said was tonight, there are specific things that it can be spent, that essentially that the city manager and the police chief can spend up to $10,000 of that in a calendar year without coming to the council.
Okay.
So if they hit 10,000 or more, that has to, then the council will decide what goes into the general revenue, what goes into, we can use it for whatever we want.
So potentially some of that money could trickle to school funding. And the reason I ask, and I'm not speaking as a board member, is there might want to be some debate whether as a community they're comfortable with drug money paying for things within the schools, because that could be politically touchy. You know, I can just, so how do we buy the new kindergarten?
Hey, good news, we're not here to solve your budget
Yeah, I
crisis.
know.
That's what the school
Right,
board's
but
for.
I think
That's our money, bro.
I think if it comes a time that possibly payments from drug money ending up in the schools is debated with the council and Eric Haley to make sure that there's no backlash with that, because I can see it. How do we pay for the kindergarten? Oh, we had a good bust on cocaine this year or something. So as a parent anyway, it would be something that I would be concerned about. If any money profit from drug busts was actually funding issues in the schools, it might be something that was worth having a debate on anyway. Thank you.
I would love to have no drug forfeiture money because the drug problem would go away, but.
And if you do get a bus with cocaine and you want to fund a kindergarten, please do.
All right. Anybody else for community notes? We will move on to the manager's report. Michael?
Well, you all got a copy of the report on how many? 7 different projects we've got going on. Just to touch quickly on them, because it's important to say that next Wednesday, the 26th, is a meeting right in this room regarding the two-way traffic downtown project, okay, from 4 to 6 p.m. And so anybody is welcome to come in next Wednesday. There's no formal presentation. It's an open session where people can come in, ask questions about parking, traffic circulation, changes in the intersection, all of that. Unless there are any questions, going on to item 2, the concourse redesign. We signed the contract for that work yesterday, and so the engineering firm is beginning their work on looking at the concourse area out the back here and how it might be maximized to increase parking. I think that holds promise for sure. Next is the Alphon Pool, and so I want to make note that the slide complex is behind schedule. The report I gave you a week ago says early July. Now it looks like mid-July. Matter of fact, the date we got from the contractor yesterday was July 19th for the slide to be open. At least the rest of the pool, main pool, is open.
A question. Is that, why is it delayed?
They got delayed seriously this spring with the wet weather, and because all of the soil around the slide area is very, very heavy clay, it was almost impossible for them to work certain days in the rain with the clay, and so that set them back, and they've never caught up.
Okay. Just want to make sure there's not something that the contractor did that would put us behind, because I'm sure that not having a slide there could affect the amount of money that we get, because a lot of the kids who go there because of the slide. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, we're not one bit happy.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing new on Castongway Square. That's going through a redesign, but that's a little bit into the future. The Head of Falls, we've been doing work with, meeting with the developers. That's at a very important stage right now because we're looking at a legal agreement with this development team as to how things proceed at Head of Falls. How does that property get developed? How does it get developed? And what role does the city play and the development group play? So there's a legal agreement that covers that we've been currently working on. There was a team of 5 or 6 of us last week that worked on that agreement. Of course, Bill Lee is right in the middle of it, helping us. That will come to the council at some point, but probably not for another month. Streetlights, we signed the contract to change our streetlights over to LEDs. It's going to take a while, but it certainly will be a huge, huge cost savings for us. It's an important project, and I want to thank Mark for all the work he did in the bidding, helping to choose the contractor, the same company that did Augusta's work that they're very happy with. So we're confident that they're just about done there in Augusta, right, Mark?
Yes.
Yep. So they'll be moving up here.
I think right at the finish line right now.
They're right at the finish line, and they're coming here soon after. Right. I hope all of you read the news about Lockwood Mills. The buildings have been sold to the new owner, North River, and they're coming tomorrow to talk with us about a TIF. We've had discussions already with them about TIFs.
Yeah.
Now it's taking a little bit more serious
You should go to
tone.
the meetings, so you can learn about it. So you know what you're talking
And that will take a couple of meetings with the TIF Advisory Committee before it
Seriously, you should go.
comes to you, but I think it will come to you in late July, early August. Maybe the last meeting in July, first meeting in August, will be something in front of you regarding a TIF for that project. So I think good news on that front. Was there any questions about any of those major projects? One last thing that I wanted to do, and I'm going to ask for Patty's help, is to show you an exciting development at Riverwalk. And I'm going to have Lisa up here helping me, because she was a key in raising the money. Now, for the Riverwalk project, you should have this sheet here in front of you. Back up, I think 2 slides maybe, Patty.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not the best one. That's, yeah.
Keep going.
No, that's good.
No, I wanted to show this first. This was,
I showed a new one.
This one more. This
nope,
one?
nope, go back, there.
We've seen them all now.
Okay, so this was the original design. And what you see in front of the amphitheater is called the pergola. And we decided, because we were concerned about just how much money were we going to be able to raise for the project. We decided just for the construction, to take this item out.
Well, can I add something at that point?
Go.
We also decided to take it out because this design doesn't work with the stage. Now Counselor Thomas pointed out to us that if we were going to bring a stage in for a performance, the structure that was there was going to potentially present a problem. So we said, gee, we don't want to build something that's going to be a problem. Let's just take it out and figure it out later.
So, we're within $4,000 of our $1.5 million goal. So we've raised $1.4 million plus for this project. And we've spent, as you can see on the sheet, and I have some extra copies here in front for people. As you can see, we have a balance in that account of $153,000. So what we would like to do, what we're going to proceed to do, is to put up an awning structure, which Patty will show you next. And there are a number of different, so if you don't mind.
Can I back up a second?
Go.
Again.
She's always doing that to me.
See, when we did, the original design you saw was based on a concept that the sort of park designer laid out, but it wasn't based on like the reality of an actual person who's going to build the structure. So what we did when we got to this stage is we went out around the state and we looked at people who actually do this. We found a beautiful example in Auburn, where the city of Auburn erected on its own riverfront park an awning that we thought was really beautiful. And it turned out it was made by a Maine artist.
And we said, wow, this is great. So we've been working with this man, his name is Charles Duval, and he's done projects around the state in different places, and he came up with this design for us, and we think it's pretty great.
Go to the next one, Patty. So it shows an aerial view of what it's going to look like. So the Riverwalk Committee met last week, and the committee has approved going forward to spend $102,000 of the remaining $150 on this project. So we want to make sure that everyone knew this was coming. I think it's going to add a tremendous amount to this. And I think the other important thing we have to say is when we campaigned.
Well, when we went to one of our lead donors, Kennebec Savings Bank, they did the naming gift for the amphitheater for $150,000. And having a shade structure in place was a part of their naming opportunity. So we presented them with the image you saw initially that had the pergola, the shade structure. So doing a shade structure has been a part of this project from the beginning, and it was approved by the council. And because so now we're in the position of actually fulfilling on the full, complete vision that we set out. And the thing that I love about this is that it's really in keeping with the quality of this park. And it's beautiful, and I think it's going to be a real showstopper at our river. And we can then, with this, I think we'll maintain the enjoyment of the amphitheater on hot sunny days when you need to have a little bit of shade. That was the original idea of having a shade structure, so that on a hot day, when you can have performances, you can have families picnicking, and there's a place to go to get out of the sun.
Questions? Yes, Phil?
I just have a general question about what the type of shows and things we could be having there, because something that I always thought that space will be used for is something similar to what's happening in Bangor with a waterfront, where you can have really big concerts for family and have families all over the fields. But structurally, is that something that is feasible because it's open? It's open to everybody.
So
16,000 people.
Yeah. So, we actually looked at that. The seating there seats 150 people in the spaces that you can see, and then there's room to picnic all around it. So the concept here is more the smaller to medium size venue. So music. We actually had some folks from the Shakespeare, the local Shakespeare theater that wanted to do some performances there. I can't remember the name of it now, and I apologize for that. But that's more what this would be keeping in. And I think that what we're going to see is when they start to do festivals down there, you'll be able to have some sort of multifaceted activities going on, and you'll be able to have some musical performances that happen here as a part of that. But this is not a Bangor waterfront. I've never been to that facility, but this isn't that.
I was just looking in terms of, generating additional revenues, if it's the way to partner with maybe Waterville Create and then create something where some people have to pay for a ticket to go and be part of a show, something like that, because we put a lot of money in it, and if we can find creative ways to be able to generate some income from that, I think why not?
Absolutely.
There'll be a whole bunch of buildings down there with people living and working.
There's also the water. The water is being
Turned on.
Turned on. Yes.
Yes.
The water pumps, are they being tuned
down there.
They're being turned on
Yes.
tomorrow?
I believe so. Mike needed.
It's supposed to happen this week. Yeah.
Okay, so this week. Okay,
No, I'm with you on that one.
The water pumps.
I was in town, and I heard from 3 people in an afternoon, when are the pumps coming on? No, we're working on it.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can spur Mike on to get that done.
And the good news is we'll have this in this summer.
And I saw this awning down in the city of Auburn, like you were talking about, and been down through the walkways at the city of Auburn because my daughter lives down there, so I visit quite often. And it's just spectacular. I think this is going to really be another showstopper on the Riverwalk altogether. So I think it's a very welcome addition. So.
Thank you.
This is just, maybe it's just me, this isn't really my cup of tea for this particular spot. I think, you've got a beautiful open spot, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 poles here. that hold this thing up. I don't know that it provides what you're looking for protection for the stage, given that there's a big hole over the center of it. So from an artsy piece, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely the exclamation point at the end of, you know, your journey, but from a functionality, I don't see that. And I mean, I guess depending on where you sit during these performances, you're lucky, but, you know.
My understanding is part of the reason why at least some of the poles are there is wind too. To keep it from turning into a sail. You know, the poles help to keep it from moving as much.
No, I mean, I get that. I mean, but, I mean, I guess then the river the best place to put a sail on posts, and not have a more structure that's, and I mean, you're paying $100,000 for this, and I don't know how long the longevity is putting this up, and it probably won't be up for the year, I mean, for the winter, so take it down and put it up, maintenance costs and things of that, and ripping and putting new pieces up, and then, oh, well, geez, we put that up, but this little piece over here ripped, so now we need a whole new section, and we've got $8 grand left in the Riverwalk Fund.
Concert.
So, I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen anything down there yet to warrant investing another $100,000 of your money to, you know, or taxpayer money. I mean,
It's not taxpayer money. This is money that's
we
been.
gave money from the TIF.
But taxpayer money did go down.
Part of it, yeah.
So 300 grand, went down there for that. So like, I don't know, I say keep looking, but that's me.
Other questions?
Yeah, it's my understanding in the very beginning when this project took on that no taxpayer money was meant to be used for this project. I look at this design, what's the warranty on it? I have a tarp on my house, after 2 or 3 years it has mold, like Mike said, pieces need replacing. Is it a 10-year, if it's a 4-year warranty and then you need to pay another $100,000, it looks like.
So it's a heavy industrial fabric. It's much stronger than the tarp in your yard. It's expected to last about 15 years, the fabric, which could then be replaced. It's not $100,000 to replace the fabric.
Right, the majority of the cost, I'm sure, is in the structure.
And the design and all of that. It's not nothing, but it's not $100,000. We had talked about, and I would like to see it happen, that to form a Friends of Riverwalk committee, so like similar to what we do with the Quarry Road, where we'll continue to raise private money to improve the park. And as Mike said, we have $153,000 left in the budget. Buying this will leave us with still about $50,000 to the good. And that's money we intend to set aside to take care of issues that come up with the equipment. But we want to add to that. I want to say, too, fundraising is not ended. We're still getting gifts because people really want to really like the pavers and the benches and the tables. The response has been terrific, and as time goes on, more and more people are still doing that, and we haven't advertised it, but people just go down there, see it, and they call and they say, can I do one of those? And the answer is yes, you can. So I think if we really went into an organized effort to really raise more money, we absolutely could, because quite frankly, the response to this park has been remarkable. People love it. They absolutely love it. And I think it's something we can all be proud of. And I think this is going to be a crown jewel.
My original question, was there any amount of warranty on it? It seems like a massive amount of money. Is there any discount for it, the amount of holes in it before you even get it?
Hillary's got
We actually, just so you know, we actually cost engineered this down to 102. It started out higher.
Hillary had a question.
Oh, yes.
So if I understand correctly, some sort of shape structure was part of a donation. So I get that it's required. I would question if it's part of if the goal is shade for families, I'm not sure that this really provides shade for families. If it's shade for a stage area, then that makes more sense. I'm not sure if it looks like it provides shade for people sitting up there. If you want to have a protective structure to protect a stage, I agree that the holes are concerning in terms of rain. But I guess you could also say how many people are going to hang out there and watch something in the rain. So I think it's beautiful, and I imagine it is probably sturdier. I'm just wondering if the objective is shade and protection, the question should be, does that fit that role? And if you think it does, then it's great.
Yes, what are the other possible uses of the funds? In other words, did you consider other alternatives other than a covered all? I thought it was nice as an open area when I was there for the opening. Beautiful sunny day. That's why people go to the park. But I mean, were there other uses for the funds considered?
So the scope of the project as approved by the council and has presented to our donors included a shade structure. The shade structure needs to be built.
That was approved by the prior council, this council members.
But they're going to donors, though.
Yeah.
Asking
Yeah.
for donations.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
at the same time, we had folks here that.
But that's apples and oranges. I think it's really a mistake to talk about another project in the context of this project.
All things that are maintained by
All right,
the city.
can we wrap? Let's
Yep,
bring it
yep.
back up this way.
Sorry.
No, thank you.
Just one more thing, in regards to fundraising, we installed 30 new pavers today
Wonderful.
at $200 a piece.
No, $400 a piece. You discounting them?
No, what? 400? 400.
$200 a name.
You see why we got her to fundraise. Now, some of those were sold last fall, but some are also sold this spring, and I think we'll continue to sell
We
them.
still, people, every day, now the spring is here and people are out enjoying it, we're getting more and more calls. So I'm very confident, and we haven't gone out and asked anybody, so I'm very confident we can raise more money for this if we need to.
Now, I don't want to compare you to another project, but when we started talking about Castaway Square, we got the public involved. Who made the final decision on this?
So again, we've had a hugely public process from the beginning. We had visioning, just as for Castaway Square, we had visioning right from the get-go. We had public hearings, people came forward, talked about what they wanted to see at the park, talked about aspirations. We've been here every step of the way, bringing people along, showing them what we're doing. And the shade structure, as I said, was always a part of this. This particular design was just, we said last fall, we're going to go out and have to, we can't do it by the time it opened last October. We didn't have enough time. So we said, okay, we're going to go out afterwards and we're going to go out and get some designs. We talked to 2 firms, one in Massachusetts and one in Maine. The Maine-based company was very willing to work with us, come up with a design that was going to do what we wanted it to do, and is beautiful. And we're, this is where we are.
I'm not in charge of this section.
Mike, I think this awning is not necessarily a shade structure. I think it's more of an art form. Because
It's definitely
it does
art,
both.
Sydney.
It
It's
does
definitely
both
art.
because I know the city of Auburn has a number of these down on their walkway. I've been going down to Auburn for over 10 years. I've been going down by the walkway, and these infrastructures that they have on their particular riverwalk is very sturdy, very reliable. They take them down for the wintertime. They put them back up. And if I've been going down there for 10 years, I certainly don't see any devalue or quality on those as I seen them now. So I would think this one would last as long.
Yep.
My only comment would be, and I've expressed this before, is that the structure is great, but we also need to think about actually programming something to happen down there. And so if you're fundraising, maybe there should be some discussion about earmarking some fundraising dollars for working with somebody, rather than hoping somebody's going to come along and do something down there, working with somebody specifically to come up with programming to activate the space down there.
Absolutely.
Eric knows just the guy.
Yes, I think Eric knows one guy that would do that. I mean, I think that would make a lot of sense to be able to partner with somebody to get some kind of revenue. Again, I'm just looking at it as the city and the donors, and I've spent a lot of money there. We have a beautiful facility. how can we, as a city, make it so that we can generate some money? We don't have to have a concert at midnight because people are sleeping and people are working. But, you know, even during the day, you know, on a weekend, how can we partner with somebody to, I'm sure people will want to go. There's plenty of green grass there and open area. If it's a nice artist coming down, I would go, and I would pay $10 to go and sit down and listen to somebody, you know, so.
Yep. Yeah. Just remember, the Riverwalk was dedicated the first week in October last year, so we're just getting our first full season. Just starting, so we're going to get all of that we can. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
$10 is not limited.
Second.
For your answer, I never